Hello everyone, so Bhashiva and the Tigermen finally released yesterday, a character pack style DLC, a new format which is smaller than regular. It launched with a few bugs and it started off very positive on Steam but has now fallen down to mixed. Now there's a few things that we need to talk about like player numbers to see if the DLC did well, the hotfix that also released just today because they've done a day one hotfix, the general roster and some possible cut content. This is alongside talking about the priorities for Creative Assembly and all the rest, including some community chatter that's been going on, some which I very much agree with. We're going to cover them all in one video because it just makes sense considering that it's all pretty much related and it's stuff that we need to talk about for essentially the future of Total War. Not just Warhammer 3, although we'll have a discussion on that later, but also 40k, Med 3, and any other future titles. This video is sponsored by Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus. Warhammer Skulls is here, we've seen a lot of cool announcements, so why don't we play a little bit of a fast-paced, turn-based mobile game set in the 41st millennium. Warhammer Tacticus has been getting tons of updates since we last talked about it, with the combat feeling really well, and you can also play it on computer. And to further all the hype, there is a big cross-promotion with the characters of Dawn of War 4. Yes, Cyrus is going to appear in Tacticus. On May 24th, Cyrus will be available during a limited time event. There is also a time-limited battle event coming up where you will play as the Necrons fighting against the Dark Angels, and if you make it to the boss fight, there's Lionel Johnson to defeat. This game has a multitude of different game modes, a massive amount of campaigns, set through different points in the 41st millennium. Not gonna lie, this is making me want to paint up some Space Marines, and well, I do have a few characters that I want to get up and running. With their constant updates, high rating, and the fact that they're winning awards like Best Community and Best Updated Game, it's showing that this has a long lifespan to come. A big thank you once again to our friends for sponsoring this video. If you're interested in trying out the game, you can scan the QR code on screen, and we do have a special code which will give you a bunch of rewards to get your journey going. That is Great Book of Cyrus. Thank you once again, and now let's return to our regularly scheduled programming. Alright, so player numbers. Normally I wait the full weekend, but it's plain to see more or less where the numbers are going to fall after its first day. Bhashiva launched yesterday at a pretty good time right before Skulls actually launched, so people were playing it a little bit earlier, and it peaked at 32,242 players, which is pretty much the average player numbers during weekends lately, so it's not going to be that much of a rise. That's not really indicative on how many people bought the DLC, but it does kind of tie into a lot there, especially as Warhammer 3 right now is on sale and is currently performing better than Bhashiva. You can see that for the top sellers, and that just is fluctuating a lot. There's a lot of sales going on, a lot of Warhammer games, and a few others just kind of jumping up and down. For comparison, by the way, when Tides of Torment released, it jumped up on its first day to around 49,000 out of like the regular 25 to 32,000 player base, and it peaked at 64. So I could imagine that we might see a little bit of a higher peak this weekend, maybe around, say 40k, if anything, right? But that means that it hasn't performed too well. And it's been a thing in regards to just like day one sales and the rest, which is usually where CA start looking at metrics, I imagine, because you know how they are. But there is a bunch of people complaining about the DLC since it is in mix, that there are bugs, quite a lot of bugs for a very small DLC and a very small patch. Now in response to everything, Creative Assembly have released a panic hotfix called 8.0.1. This is likely going through a lot of stuff that content creators started talking about, because there is quite a few bugs. Most of it fixing a fair amount of stuff, which is good to see. Not really a lot of fixes coming in. In fact, the battle balance changes is literally just like, okay, we're going to reduce the gold cost and then there's just change like 2 stats and that's it, which is kind of disappointing. But I mean, this is what's happened, right? And this isn't really too much of a fault of CA. When CA said that they were going to do smaller patches, people should have actually been a bit more vocal rather than just kind of go like, oh yeah, that's perfectly fine. A nerf came in for the Gate Masters, which was kind of expected, and well, there's nothing really big to talk about when it comes to the general fixes. Still no fix to the absolutely abysmal range nerf for the Sky Lantern, because apparently they're supposed to have like crossbow range despite having crane guns. It's super weird. I don't know who's doing the balancing when it comes to this, but when a weapon is on a mount, it doesn't reduce the range of the weapon. The next time that we can expect anything for Warhammer 3, barring any showcases that might happen next month, is Update 8.1 or Patch 8.1. They keep changing the names around. Now that likely could be in about a month and a half time. That's usually the average, and it's something that we have to wait and see for how much is going to be there, but again, it's likely to be as small as the Bhashiva patch and no free units. Which again, this is something that tied people over because one free unit still gives people a reason to jump back in and play around, same thing as just seeing general updates, but it does seem like they are busy with other matters. With C.A. Freeman having made a post on Reddit somewhere, which was talked about quite heavily by people, basically just saying, yeah, you know, naturally this update delivers content relative to the scale of the release of the content pack itself and gives us the opportunity to provide updates for the existing content in game, which it interacts with. Essentially, they're going back with what they said before, and it's like, oh, well, you know, we did a blog about this, it's cheap and it shows. What kind of worries me is just the communication in the next section. At the time we published that blog on changing up our updating version, we hadn't yet announced the first character pack, so clearly our heads were in the wrong place with that comms. I've asked the team to help revise those comms, to help clarify, and we'll need to remanage those expectations for 9.0 and Lords of the End Times later this summer. It's a much more substantial release with a lot more content that interacts with a lot more of the game, so it will scale differently. Alright, that's cool, but you knew, like, as a staff member, the staff would have already known about the said content pack, so they would have already been able to manage expectations. If not, what is going on in the background, right? A lack of hindsight is kind of weird from a company as large as Creative Assembly, especially as, you know, again, 0.0 patches have always been larger, and they should always remain larger, give people a reason to come back and play. If not, you're not really giving people the incentive to buy Bhashiva or any other potential future character packs. And then obviously a distraction con effects by going, yeah, you know, Lords of the End Times news coming out this summer, we're really excited about that, all the usual. It's a comms error, that's on me, thanks for feedback on it, keep it coming. Which, I mean, it is, I feel like every quarter year now we're getting a, oh yeah, it's a comms error. Which, you know, kind of read the room at this point. And that's not even my comment on the situation, it's just a ton of people saying that in the same Reddit thread, which I get it, you know, like, it's a lot of the same, you know, it's a comms error, it's a comms error. At this point, if you know the content's going to be smaller, it's important to manage expectations. But the reason why people are mad is actually pretty justified. There is a pretty awesome Reddit thread, which I'm going to actually link in the description below, called CA, Please Stop Starting, Start Finishing. This is by someone called Shub, and there's a lot of detail there. Essentially, Creative Assembly keeps starting projects or mentioning that they're going to start projects, and it never really gets finished. The corruption rework and public order rework, which was stated last year, obviously that's something that we can expect for the end times. Then there was talk about auxiliary reworks, AI updates, which is coming soon in 8.1, but we don't know exactly when. The siege update, which has been an ongoing issue since this game was launched. The power creep, they always say that they're going to have a look at it and nothing's going happening. Certain balancing changes, feature-focused dev blogs, which never really continued. Battle map tree cluster updates, so the tree acne, they did some of it and then they stopped. There is a lot of stuff, and it looks like, yeah, that's happening a lot more. Now, one thing I will stand on CA with, which is not really standing on CA, but it's a logic thing more than anything else. There was complaints about the Skull Reapers and the Wrathmongers not being available to Archeon yet. I said it actually a while back, actually when Omens of Destruction released, it's like, this is likely when they do an End Times DLC, because they're End Times units, and that's probably when they're going to do it for Archeon. At least, that's what I want to think. A lot more people started presenting other issues throughout the thread, which is good to see, because at the end of the day, while Creative Assembly might see this as a negative post, which they very much likely will, this is good. This is communication. The fan base should obviously voice their issues with the title. And conversation is in fact healthy, even when it's talking about negative aspects like stuff that really hasn't been fixed up despite multiple claims that they're being looked at. I have seen some people say, well, it's really silly because modders can do it quicker. And yes, while modders can do it quicker, remember that modders don't have the Creative Assembly management team kind of just changing stuff around, and obviously Games Workshop. But I don't think that Games Workshop is a reason why trades are taking so long, because, look, let's be honest, they really don't fucking care, do they? They just want the game to come out and start making money. Obviously, there's certain things that they do care about, but I very much doubt that they're going to be like, oh yeah, this trait is wrong. Balance changes are stuff that can be done relatively quickly, but I do imagine that it's because a lot of the attention and what's left of the Warhammer 3 team is focusing on Lords of the End Times, which would explain the issues that are starting up with the Bhashiva DLC and the adjoining patch. The balancing has been pretty off, and it kind of shows that this was kind of rushed through. I'm not sure what the intention was here, but I guess they really wanted something out for Skulls, maybe via contract, or they thought that they were going to have enough time. I don't know how that works, but it does feel like Bhashiva should have had a little bit more time in the oven, especially when we have to look to other matters. Which leads us to the actual patch releases. When a patch or a DLC comes out, the modding community will jump onto it straight away. And in most cases, it isn't for the purpose of playing around with the content, but rather to jump around and see what they could do for their own mods. A new skeleton is always very exciting, new animations and the rest. And in some cases, more often than not, Creative Assembly accidentally leave game files in there for either cut content or a prototype that just never made it into the limelight. In this case, it's shields for the Tiger Warriors. So, I spoke to a few modders because, yeah, you know, communication's always cool and I love the modding community. I do think it's a big reason why Warhammer 3 is as strong as it is. And Green Phoenix managed to get some pictures of said found shields. They are textured and they were in the game files alongside some other details. Like there was like a mention of Ind culture, but I think it's just something tied to maybe a caravan or something. Now obviously we don't have Tiger Warriors with shields. You can see them here. These are just like modded in to have the shields on. Apparently not a lot of work took there, but if they did do, you know, texturing and creating a shield model, it's kind of clear that Creative Assembly had some sort of plan with said shields. Now we do know from Games Workshop official art that the Tiger Warriors do have a hand weapon and shield, which means that this is potentially cut content for the DLC and the Tiger Men in general. I don't think it would have been an approval issue with Games Workshop considering the artwork had a hand weapon and shield which can be seen on screen at the same time as the other stuff. I think it's maybe they ran out of time. It very much depends. And this isn't new. Cut content happens all the time. In fact, you know, there's Regiments of Renown that were cut, and I think there was a very popular mod that brought them back. And it was mentioned by, you know, the president of Total War, or I think that's his title, right? Roger Callum, that, yeah, content gets cut all the time. And that's perfectly fine. The problem is, obviously, if you still leave it in the game files, people can find it. And when that's found, it's like, well, how close to completion was it? Because from what I'm gathering, talking to various modders, it's on a pretty good state. There are a few animation issues, but that's kind of expected when it comes to content that wasn't fully completed, especially when it comes to stuff like Tiger Warriors that are jumping, because some of the animations do look a little bit strange where the shield is clipping onto the ground. Well, mind you, there's a bunch of stuff that gets added in officially, and they have clipping issues with the ground, and, well, clipping issues with themselves. Now, we did have a similar situation with the Ironside repeaters, where the Ironsides had repeaters before launch and they shouldn't have, and that was removed after a bit of backlash. There was drama, content creator leaked it, there was drama post that, still didn't get removed, and then it was covered by Legend of Total War, which afterwards it did get removed. The difference here is that we've known that Ironsides never had repeater guns. As lovely as that would have been, both in the tabletop and obviously in Total War, it's just not a thing. The Games Workshop official art here does show Tiger Men with a hand weapon and shield, which, I mean, would have been kind of nice. There is not a lot of Tigers. You're incentivized to go full Tiger, but you're missing out on a bunch of units. I do feel like, yes, this pack would have been a lot better if they would have had this unit and possibly a bowman just to give you a little bit of different uses. You don't get really the full feel for it, which kind of sucks, because if you're going to go full Tiger on a normal vanilla campaign, you're building for your Tiger Warriors, not so much for the... I don't really care too much about the normal Kitharian factions, but for Shiva, 2, 3, and 4 for that building is awful, as you start with a minor settlement. It's like, well, you kind of lose the incentive to get all the way up to the Iron Claws until later on. Or you're going to have to delete the building and switch it around. You can see where the issue comes from. If there was a tier 1 unit alongside that, maybe a little bit better, because at least it'll give you some extra units from the very beginning. Or else you're just basically stuck with basic Tiger Warriors from the very start, until a fair amount of turns pass. You can see where the issue comes from. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight this in the general conversation because I think it's kind of important to talk about. Because like, yeah, it does look like Creative Assembly is busy, but busy with loads of other factors. I think at this point, maybe stretching a bit thin. I guess time will tell. June will have more information. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about anything here. I decided to do like a bigger video just to kind of discuss everything in one go. There wasn't really a point talking about like the hotfix, barring just like, it's just general optimization. I'll be live later on twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges. We are enjoying Skulls Week right now, so a little bit of Mechanicus too. I'm not 100% sure when I'm going to be going live. It's just, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I needed a little bit of an extra sleep. It's been non-stop with last second changing deadlines and the rest, and it's been 18-hour days non-stop. Believe me, when stuff like this goes on in the background, there's a lot going on. And I don't mean like Total War, I mean in general. I was involved with a lot of stuff with Skulls this year, which was nice, but very last momenty. Have a good one, guys. Have a good day. Bye.